said it. Those were the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
And no, she didn't do it. No, she didn't do it.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? Happy Thursday. Wanted to talk to you today about the red flags in the Karen Reed case. If you don't know who Karen Reed is, Karen Reed has been charged with second-degree murder of her police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe. Reed is accused of hitting O'Keefe in January of 2022 with her car and leaving him to die in the snow in front of friends in a friend's house. After the couple shared a night of drinks, the case has amassed a group of supporters and detractors alike, the former asserting Reed was framed and the detractors arguing the state has got it right and Reed is guilty. So before I get into some of what I see as the red flags, I want to thank my moderators. Murder by Maestro. It's Miss Shorty. Tammie. And, of course, the society page. For moderating the chat, please keep it civil. All right, and I'm going to go into your comments. Let's get into your comments. And back up your opinion. Those are the two things I ask. Got some interesting comments. First, from Come Down. Personally, whether I was guilty or innocent, I would take any opportunity to dismiss the case. Really, Come Down? So you'd be okay with having the suspicion of murder kind of hang over you for the rest of your life? Never really proving your innocence? Never getting the public to see any of the real evidence in the case? And only really seeing the innocence campaign that your legal team has put on? Okay. Karen Hill, 3541 says, hard face, thin lips, always smirking and smug. Something is off about this woman enjoying all the attention, hype, and support from Turtle Boy and his followers. So if you don't know who Turtle Boy is, he's a blogger. He's been arrested and charged with intimidation of witnesses in this case. Witnesses in this case have been harassed at their children's sports events. They've been knocking on hundreds of witnesses' doors, accusing them of murder, and never once has Karen Reed or her legal team really called off the dogs. I consider that certainly a red flag. no hint of emotion or anger on her face, considering she drove off in a drunken rage, leaving behind John O'Keefe all alone and died a gruesome death in the snow. I'll wait for the facts to come out during the trial. Great stream, Roberta. That's so just to be clear, and I know no matter how many times I'm going to say this, I'm going to have the she's innocent until proven guilty argument of comments. But I want to say that I am waiting for the trial. Thanks to It's Miss Shorty, I have a whole bunch of the legal filings. So that's what I'm really interested in looking at. I'm not interested in looking at so-and-so's podcast, so-and-so's blog, so-and-so's YouTube channel. The most unbiased arguments on both sides of the aisle, in this case, are going to be in the court documents. And that's what I'm more interested in reading. And I think that what I find really interesting, in this case, is that those on the guilty side get accused of being biased and unfair and jumping to conclusions, but that's never an argument on the innocent side, because of course an innocent position is seen as more benign. But obviously it's not benign if people are being harassed, accused of being killers with very little evidence. And all those things I find red flags. And we've seen them in the Innocence campaign. Usually what I talk about when I talk about Innocence campaigns, I'm talking about campaigns that start 14 years on average after a conviction. But in this case, we have an Innocence campaign going on in the PR. And I thought one of the most disingenuous arguments yesterday in court was the argument from Karen Reed's legal team that the state, by the DA making one statement on camera, has totally prejudiced the case against Karen Reed, whereas she can do interviews, she can have not a nonstop media campaign. And people have also seen advertisements in the local paper for Karen Reed's to pay Karen Reed, to pay people to pose as Karen Reed supporters, to stage a protest every time she's in court, to make it look like she has a lot of really dedicated supporters, which I believe she does have some, but are they dedicated enough to make it to Canton, Massachusetts and get off work, especially in this economy? I don't know. Told Althea says, Elle and Roberta, please don't go with she looks guilty. No, I wasn't saying she looks guilty. I was looking at the words out of her own mouth and her own actions that night. And I find it very odd that she's putting it into the realm of possibilities that she hit him. Isn't that odd when now she's saying there's no chance? Isn't it odd that she's calling her friends to come look for him and she walks directly to the spot where she dropped him off, 6 a.m. And according to the search, which is how long to die in the snow, she asked her friend that question to Google it, how long it takes to have someone die in the snow. So, it really reminds me, I will keep an open mind until trial, but all these things I find concerning. And I just wanted to take a rational, unemotional look as much as I can. Obviously, I've some red flags have been raised for me in this case. And I lean a little bit more towards guilty. But I'm flexible. I could be persuaded the other way. But I'm certainly not going to be persuaded until I fully hear the other side. And I don't think we've heard the other side of the argument completely. We haven't heard the other experts. She's been very successful in really papering the media with her side. And that I also find concerning, that she's so disinterested in trying this. She doesn't want to try this in court, but she's very happy to try it in the court of public opinion, which, as you know, there's no punishment for lying to the media. There's no punishment or consequences for crafting a false narrative for these lawyers. This town and the state police are notoriously corrupt. Okay, told Althea, show me where they've been corrupt in this case. Don't be a minor leaguer here. Many, many layers. I don't know how that makes me a minor leaguer. And when you put in insults like that, it makes me think your argument's not very strong. Show me where there's been corruption in this case. Show me the motivation for the people inside the house to do this. Because certainly Karen Reed, by her own admission, has said that the relationship between herself and John O'Keefe was very tense at this time. Add a lot of alcohol to the mix, and maybe this isn't something that Karen Reed would normally do sober. But I found maybe she just cracked. Like her taillight. It wasn't smashed, it was cracked. Maybe she cracked up. Food for thought. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, we have the interview with her parents. We have the footage of a whole interview with her supporter, which I found really interesting. I believe that was on Court TV. Anything that I use, I got a really funny comment yesterday that they didn't want me to stop the video. So if you want to watch these videos uninterrupted without my commentary, the links are always in the description of the episode. Mandolin Wind, thank you so much for the super sticker. I also want to thank KB and Dana Natale for becoming Patreon supporters, working on a new episode on a fantastic cross-examination. And cross-examination, like I said yesterday, has often been called the engine of truth. Be very interesting to see if Karen Reed takes the stand in this trial. But first off, I just want to look to continue. I thought this was really interesting. I just want to play for you this clip. So the interview I played in the opening, and so nothing I show here proves guilt. So I'm going to say it again. None of these arguments, as far as things that raise my red flags, prove guilt. I'm trying to show you what I'm thinking about looking at this case as I go through it in real time. So this is not an argument meant to prove guilt, okay? But I found it very interesting in the opening clip where she's asked if she did it. So here's her time to deny it and tell us she didn't do it. She can't tell us she didn't do it. She doesn't say no, she didn't do it. And of course, statement analysis is not brought into allowed in court. I'm not a statement analyst. But I find it interesting that I would be dying to say, no, I didn't do it. And I'm very confused as to how she knows, being away from the house, exactly what happened. She doesn't say it looks like, she says, I know. So she's made a total turn from An unrelated witness, a neutral witness in this case, heard her say, I did it. Now, whether you're going to believe that, we're going to have to wait for court, whether we believe that testimony. Karen Reed says, she said, did I do it? So, but already she's putting it into the realm of possibility that she could have done it. And her lawyer picks up on it right away that this is a very bad look that she can't say she did it. And he'll say it for her. So, and it reminded me of Nicholas Kay, a UK English case, the husband of Rhonda Kay, and when he was asked if he did it. So I put those back to back. Let's take a look. Actually, I'm sorry about that. Let me pull it up a better way so I can move forward. I must have, my apologies. I was rushing. Rushing does not make a good thing. I was rushing to get it done in time. So and I must have left some black in the beginning, like a lot of black in the beginning here. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that, guys. My apologies. So let's get to the beginning of it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do. And no, she didn't do it. No, she didn't do it. This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
I tried to save his life.
Yeah.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in his blood. I was the only one trying to save his life.
Why'd you admit?
So she was covered in his blood. And she does that a lot. She'll cut off the last words in her sentences, just editing. When I've been editing, I find it doesn't mean anything. I just find it interesting. So she was going to say blood, and then she stopped herself. Just kind of interesting. But she's not saying she didn't do it. So being the only one interested in innocence is not the same as saying I didn't do it to find out the truth. Remember, she was, according to the prosecution's case, 3 sheets to the wind.
She didn't admit to it. She didn't admit to anything close to that. Nothing close to that. And you should know that.
That was like 3 or 4 times she admitted to it.
No, she didn't.
That's not true.
She asked a question. She asked a question, which is very different. She didn't admit to anything.
So lawyer knows that that's gone very badly, and that's the end of the press conference right there. They turn on their heels and go into the courthouse, or leave. I think this was actually after the hearing, not before. So they leave. End of PR end of PR exercise there. So this is, like I said before, Nicholas Kay. You don't really have to know anything about the case. This is from a documentary called Crocodile Tears.
And then it ends.
At a press conference, a journalist was given the go-ahead to ask the question everyone wanted answered.
You killed your wife. What do you think?
I was a bit surprised by that, but I just asked him then, please answer the question.
No, I have not killed my wife.
I was really pleased that that particular question did come out, because it was one of the questions that I wanted to ask myself.
I didn't expect the answer that he gave. I would have liked a much more sincere and concerned answer. I think a lot of people watching that interview would have expected to see some genuine signs of distress on his part.
What do you think?
So is that distress? And instead we see defiance. We see no sadness around John O'Keefe's death. We see defiance. And I find it very interesting. I think supporters should ask themselves, why are they all saying she didn't do it when she can't say she didn't do it? She's got to have her lawyer prompt her on it. But I may be wrong. Let's wait for the trial. Let's see what the defense has. But I find it very concerning that they can't give us, like I said, any motivation in this. And let me just kick this out for, hold on one second. And I wanted to play an interview also of her supporter, Shari Davis, kind of making me crazy, but I still love your channel. I still love you too, Shari. You'd be at home in this apartment. We're arguing all day. Actually, you want to bring in my boyfriend? Look at all the P real time yesterday. FBI, Jen McCabe. Okay, I will. Jen McCabe. But my understanding with Jen McCabe's that the forensics on that do not show 2:30. It shows 6 o'clock when they came back that they looked. But I will look at, I have all the court transcripts. I got a day off. My days off really aren't days off. I really work all the way through them. But thank you very much. I'm just going to bring in my, is this reminding you? Honey?
Yeah, can you hear me?
You
got me? All right, I'll come in.
Okay, I'm going to pull you out of, I'm going to kick you out of the studio. Yeah. I'm getting I think it's much better.
That's all right.
Much better.
What's up?
So is this reminding you?
Hold on a second. 2 seconds. I got notes.
He's got notes. We're going to argue it out. We've been arguing this case out. Shari. All since I went on last night. So what's your position on it?
All right. Well, yeah, I've got, I can't make a decision because what I'm about to say, a photograph of a dead guy's arm. And the photograph that I saw, and I have to give, I should have written her name down. Pamela somebody. I saw this on her YouTube. Somebody recommended her in the chat yesterday. Thank you, whoever did that. I think it was Shari. Possibly, forgive me if I'm wrong. But basically, I watched this video, and they compared the picture of the photograph of the arm of the dead guy to
John O'Keefe.
Yes, excuse me. The victim, rest in peace. And this person, Pamela, had this dog bite sort of specialist on. They even showed a sort of prosthetic thing. It looks like a forearm, but it had similar marks to it after dogs had bit. He showed regular photographs of real people's arms that had dog bites. And the way a dog bites is they bite on the arm. Someone had to try to talk me out of this earlier. But the dog bites the arm. If it's your arm, you try to pull away. The dog tries to pull away. And if you look at the photograph, and then the dog will try to, unleash and lunge forward and bite again. So there's parallel lines, just like real dog bites. Now, to me, that right there is a big, giant red flag that he wasn't hit by a car, and that it's likely he was attacked by a dog. And if he was attacked by a dog, that's another can of worms. Was somebody walking their dog after she hit him in the snow and the dog just started biting his arm? What else? Lots of questions. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's see. Let's see how it does look. So let's look at the actual picture shown by the defense in court of John O'Keefe's arm compared to what my boyfriend just pulled up. Hold on one sec. So this is the defense picture. So I'll just flash back and forth. If you can see that, if you're listening on podcast, what this particular bit arm is very swollen and the marks are very thick and vertical and red. And there's a lot of red in the middle. So, of course, there's no word what the conditions were this. So we're looking at this one. So we're looking at the upper arm. That's the bicep. And the this is what the prosecution is calling, I believe, road burn or road scrapings from being hit. And so if you look at the upper two where the bicep are, those would have to be done together, and they don't have the real red middle. Obviously there may be, a difference. There's differences. I'm not going to go into it for YouTube, but let's look at some. If you look up dog bite on Google, these are dog bites, other dog bites. It's interesting that they found ones that are very vertical. So they're, this was a German Shepherd, a police dog. But the problem with that is that, the problem with that is that no one is, and this, yes, it was a blizzard. No one is seen on these Ring cameras doing it. And Karen Reed, like I said, he would have had to be magically transported out the door. There's no pattern of blood. And then all these people would have to make up a story that held up. No one has a conscience, and there's no motive, and there's no one caught moving him. And then you have Karen Reed, who has a motivation. They were both intoxicated. Things were very tense. And no one can prove that he actually went into that house. There's no pictures of him actually coming or going from that house. So when people say, oh, well, they didn't see him, the snow shoveler didn't see him. This was a northeastern, 2 feet of snow. So they couldn't find him in that 2 feet of snow. Like I said, I grew up in a country. We lost things every winter and discover them every spring. Windshield scrapers, all sorts of mittens, all sorts of things we lost that would get in a pile of snow. So that's not unusual. And I'm not trying to be callous, but okay, you want to do your counter? My boyfriend's tapping his foot very impatiently.
Okay. These are dog bites, right? What kind of dog bites? This dog that they had in their home was an attack dog. The photographs I saw were not random dog bites. They were dog bites from a trainer of police dog. Now, this dog happened to be a former police dog. And so a random dog bite in my mind is like the shoulder here, the first top right one, or now that's a lot different. I think to me, like that's one bite on the hand on the bottom. That was, on the bites that don't look like that. There's another, with this one single bites in these places. This looks like an attack, not a bite to me. And if you look at that video, I'm sorry to keep referring to that video, but if you've ever seen video of a dog, like plenty of times of dogs attacking somebody and they put this thing on the forearm to protect them, and the dog chomps, then it might unchomp to try to get a better grip and chomp again. And these are the marks that are consistent with that. Okay. And I think, and that the thing is, you can talk about the unlikelihood of this or that. There is a thing that people have heard for decades called, like the blue wall of silence or whatever. The fact that they're all police officers, to me, makes it more likely that, yes, a bunch of them could keep a secret. Right. And I'm sorry to say that.
But can you prove that it happened in this case?
I can't prove that. And I also want to say it's not that I don't like police officers. It's just that I think history has shown us that you can't always trust them. And we need proof.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. We do need proof. And let's bring in, this is a really interesting interview with Karen Reed's parents and hold on, sorry guys, I'm probably blowing out your ears. I'm trying to swing my microphone around a lot. I hope it's not too troublesome. Let me just show you this interview with Karen Reed's parents, and it goes through also the exclusive video. Like I said, the links. Hold on one sec. Please hold, guys.
beaten in a basement, dragged out through a bulkhead, and left in a snowstorm to die in the cold.
That's how Karen Reed's family claims John O'Keefe was killed in the town of Canton. They shared that theory with 25 Investigates reporter Ted Daniel.
Ted spoke to...
See, just the fact that they're doing so many of these press offenses, I would be so anxious to clear my name. And it's one thing when you're really stressed for cash, but this looks like a very well-moneyed, well-financed campaign. And sure, maybe a bunch of people, something happened, could all keep silent. But show me that it happened in this case. And just because the blue wall of silence is a thing, show me that it's happened in this case. This is how the defense works, by sort of making these blanket generalizations. Just because something exists doesn't mean it existed in this case. And this idea that Karen Reed is some kind of victim, that everyone's out to get her for no reason of her own, I'm finding it really hard to buy. Just I'm finding it a little hard to buy. That just Karen Reed, just because she's Karen Reed, that they couldn't wait to indict her, that they had this is what they say every time, tunnel vision investigation. Anyone remember Charlie Adelson's trial?
Okay. I'm just responding to the part about Reed being a victim. Of course she's a victim. If she didn't do the crime, she's a victim. And to me, it looks like the stuff is pointing that way. I haven't made up my mind yet, but the audience can probably tell where I'm leaning towards this. And I think that, just because I'm saying because the blue wall of silence is a thing, it's just a factor. This isn't proof. It's just a factor. Just makes it more likely.
Okay. Thank you, honey. Thank you. All right. So let's get back into, but show me that it's happened in this case. That's all I'm saying. Same with the DA. Just because and it looks like there's a lot of money, a lot of razzle dazzle, a lot of things to make it look as if so we will forget the particulars. Remember, the devil is in the details. Often you have to really pay attention to the boring details. And in a case like this, it doesn't, on the prosecution side, doesn't have a lot of mystery, right? It's just like, well, they were a couple, there was tension, there was drinking, got out of control, and she cracked up and lost it and ran him over and regretted it. And that's what she's saying. I was the only one trying to save his life because you were the only one who knew he was in trouble. And when you include drinking, the fact that his friends, I'd like to learn more about his friends' reaction to not showing up. They must have thought something else happened.
Reed's parents for nearly 2 hours about their fight to prove their daughter's innocence.
It seems logical that police would have looked at Karen Reed as a possible suspect. One of her taillights had fresh damage. She openly questioned if she hit John O'Keefe, and prosecutors say she left him a voicemail that night saying she hated him. Those are some of the facts being used against her, but Reed's parents and thousands supporting her say there's so much more to this story that doesn't add up.
She's from Taunton with a career.
Right. And that's also an objective of these campaigns, to make things look fishy. And just because something is odd or weird doesn't mean that their story is true, that there's a dog bite thrown out into the snow miraculously. And she takes her friend right to the place where she dropped him off. Kind of interesting. And she's looking at her phone right at the key moment when he gets in. When I've had cab drivers, and I'll look behind me and they want to make sure I get into my building. Okay. Strangers, but they live together. They're lovers, and he's not going to care. She's not going to care whether he gets in okay. She's more concerned with her phone. What is she looking for at her phone? I know people are obsessed with their phone, but kind of odd. Right at the key moment, she's remembering herself looking at the phone.
In finance, he was a Boston cop from Braintree.
I really don't want to be in the picture.
Get over here. Karen Reed's parents say she and John O'Keefe became serious in 2019, right before the pandemic.
They just seem to be in a happy place, you know, yeah.
And spending a lot of time together?
Yes. Yes.
Vacations together.
Yep.
Going out together.
If the relationship had become toxic by January 2022, as prosecutors allege, it's not apparent from this snapshot in time. At CF McCarthy's in Canton, they laugh and embrace during a night of heavy drinking.
Right. So it wasn't tense then, but if you go back to Karen Reed's own interview, she was saying there were tensions in this relationship. She admits it. It's not she admits it. She doesn't deny it.
According to police, Karen would back over John and leave him for dead in a snowstorm 2 hours later. Prosecutors say it happened outside the Canton home of another Boston cop named Brian Albert. Karen says she dropped John off there for a get-together.
During your first discussions with Karen, did she believe she may have hit John?
No. She felt she struck something. She said, Dad, I think I struck something. I said, what do you mean? Right? This was in the hospital. Right? He says,
That's not a good fact for Karen Reed. She struck something, and we're going to see this piece of video that they put out. But there's no damage to the other car. Obviously, it's after she hit something that night. There's damage to her car, but no damage to the other car. Prosecutors are going to argue the damage is on Brian O'Keefe's body.
I remember, all right, backing up and hitting something.
Police find damage to the passenger side taillight of Karen's Lexus LX 570. How the damage occurred is in dispute. The Reeds believe it happened when Karen backed out of John O'Keefe's driveway, hours after police say she hit him. Here's the video.
She backs up to go out and search for John O'Keefe. And that's how that vehicle was damaged.
In court documents, prosecutors say the video only shows Karen coming close to John's car, and no fragments or pieces of a broken taillight were discovered in John's driveway.
Look at it, frame by frame. And you tell me whether or not the O'Keefe vehicle, the left rear wheel, does not jetson forward upon impact and return to its previous position.
Police did discover pieces of taillight where O'Keefe was allegedly hit, but the Reeds say it wasn't until after Karen's SUV was in the custody of law enforcement.
Right, so then they have to plant, so it has to be some kind of conspiracy, right?
State police reported towing the Lexus to the Canton police station at 5:30 p.m. Nathan Reed says daylight video from his dad's house shows the car was taken more than an hour before that.
They confiscate Karen's car at my parents' residence in North Dighton at 4:16 p.m. And somewhere in the neighborhood of 5:30, 5:45, Mass State Police CERT team comes back to the scene. They search the scene then with 2 feet of snow, and pieces of a tail lamp are found on top of the snow.
The Reeds also...
Right, okay. And no footprints, there would also be, you would think, some blood. Is that all going to be washed away or winded away in a northeaster? It'd be interesting to learn what the weather was like, and hopefully that'll all be in the court documents.
Also question John's injuries as seen in autopsy photos. They say John appears to have dog bites on his arm. The defense theory is that O'Keefe was beaten inside the Albert home and attacked by the Albert's German Sheppherd. Brian Albert's attorney declined to comment.
Our investigators also have found multiple people who have been attacked.
So he was attacked by a dog and people in the home, and no real damage to this is a big guy. And he's getting into a fist fight and a dog fight. and there's no real knuckle injuries. Like, let's take a look at that one more time. Oh no, I don't actually have pictures of the hand. That'd be interesting to see. I'll have to search for that.
By the dog, I think John O'Keefe.
And apparently I have heard that there are also altered pictures going around, and whole pictures, very upsetting to O'Keefe's family, going around. Autopsy. Not ones shown in court, and altered pictures. So, you know, the fact that all this is done, these are things you do to obscure the truth, not get to the truth.
O'Keefe entered that house, was sucker punched, a fight ensued, and he was overwhelmed.
Prosecutors call that theory a fanciful conspiracy. According to the Norfolk DA's office, 8 people inside the home.
So, I am not of the opinion 8 people can't keep a, we hear about these things, conspiracy theories, and they say this many people would have to be involved and they all have to keep a secret. But in this case, they all have to, lie to law enforcement, be okay with it. None of them have a conscience. No one tell their friends when everybody's very interested in it. But it would be interesting to see what the defense has, if they have some witness. I mean, just this, I really, I hear people saying I don't trust the prosecutors, and these kind of campaigns where people are being harassed and accused, and they're papering the media, and they're asking for total dismissal and not wanting to argue in court, make me think that they're really interested in putting on some kind of show with no rules. Very strict rules for evidence in court. If you don't know, if you're just tuning in, my name is Roberta Glass. We're talking about the Karen Reed, red flags in the Karen Reed case today. We're going to be staying with this case for a little bit. Obviously, there's not a lot of, not a super lot of interest when you come at it on this side. There's not that many I'm trying to keep it within a factual, stick to the what's been presented in our media and our courts. But let's see.
And 3 more outside had testified that O'Keefe never entered. The office says GPS data from O'Keefe's phone backs that up.
And they all made this, so his phone is lying. These people are all lying. His phone is lying that he never made it in there? Or did the police somehow manipulate his phone? And they manipulated the Ring cameras. It's a lot to be done in a nor'easter that these police are wandering around. And we know Karen Reed was calling around panicked. Why was she so panicked in telling people that this was possible, that she did hit something? And when you say something, she's putting it also, again, in the realm of possibilities that she could have hit her lover, John O'Keefe.
A medical examiner who performed an autopsy on O'Keefe found no signs of Mr. O'Keefe being involved in any type of physical altercation or fight.
If the events happen the way Karen's attorneys say they did, how many people would have to be involved in the cover-up?
My sense is that there are a handful of people, influential people, who know what happened. And ultimately, will resolve these issues. My daughter will be free. That's what I believe.
Are you
Well, that's very vague. All you have to say is a handful. So these sort of shadowy, influential people without naming them or what their motivation is. So is he saying they're involved? And is he saying that Albert is very powerful? Or is all covering for Albert and they're all want to risk their jobs to cover for him?
Confident of that as well?
Yes. Yep.
Is Karen?
Yes.
That confident?
Yes. Yeah. We are.
The Norfolk County DA's office.
Well, she's so confident. Then why is she going on? Why is she letting these PR campaigns for these really, really dangerous PR campaigns? These are people's lives. I've had people call me who are in hiding because of these innocence fraud campaigns. And I don't want to call this one an innocence fraud campaign, but what I'm saying is it's raising some serious red flags. It's looking an awful lot like it. Let's listen to one of her supporters was interviewed on Court TV. I found his interview very interesting. Let's take a listen to it.
So if the
and then because this is so much, I didn't realize I was going to play so much of the beginning of that. I just want to switch to the beginning of the interview. So this is here we go.
On the show, there he is, the Turtle Boy and his Turtle Riders. He's a blogger. He calls himself a journalist. He calls himself a YouTuber. However you want to define him, he has sort of spearheaded this support for Karen Read. But in the meantime, he's now been arrested and is facing charges for allegedly intimidating witnesses. Here he is being released in one of the times he got locked up. The story is, again, unlike any case, trial I've covered in my history at Court TV. So I am fascinated by the support for Karen Read. I understand.
Right. And how much is it real? So if you can manufacture the look of a lot of support, we're human animals. We like to be in a group. We're social creatures. We like to be in a group of people, of like-minded people. That's what makes, I guess, my relationship so unusual. You don't often see couples that disagree on almost everything. You know, they say opposites attract, but not too often do you see that, right? So that's what makes someone like Marlee Matlin and James Carvell really interesting. Well, how do you get along? Where do you see common ground? So I thought his answers were very interesting. So this is obviously not Turtle Boy, and I'll be covering him and his case in the future, but let's just listen to her.
And I think from our discussions with Turtle Boy, where his support comes from, and he's covering the story, and he was covering true crime stories, and became convinced that Karen Read was innocent. But how about the rest of those folks? The rest of those folks. Let me bring in our guest, special guest joining us tonight from Wilmington, Massachusetts, avid Karen Read supporter, and apparently the man who funded the Karen Read billboard truck. Nick Rocco is with us tonight. Nick, thanks so much for joining us.
How you doing, Vinny? Thanks for having me on.
Good. So everyone knows there's a slight delay, so he's hearing me in a delay, so I'm just going to wait for Nick's responses. So, Nick, do you have any connection to Turtle Boy? Do you have any connection to Karen Read?
No, other than getting involved in this case, I have no personal connection to anyone involved.
So what is it? Why? Why would you spend your own hard-earned money, because I know you work hard, for the billboards? Why would?
Because it's also exciting and it gives people purpose. You know, I was raised by activists. So if you don't know my story, I was raised by leftist activists. Obviously, if you've been following my channel, I no longer really take on those views that I was indoctrinated into, but it gives you purpose. It gives you a community. And it's exciting because on the guilty side, nothing's going to happen. She could be convicted. There's nothing I can do to really influence that. But on the innocent side, something's always happening. And there are multiple possibilities of where the case can go. It's a much more exciting story. That there's a blue wall of silence, and that the shadowy police people, and our media is, as you know, very anti-police, so much so that we've had multiple politicians here take on the idea to defund the police to disastrous consequences.
Did you spend the time to support an accused cop killer?
It's not the first campaign for a cop killer. Mumia Abu Jamal in Philadelphia. I've covered that case. Look up Roberta Glass and the barrel of a gun. That is one of the longest innocence campaigns. And they just had a whole week honoring this cop killer, Officer Faulkner's killer, Wesley Clark. It's his real name, Mumia Abu Jamal, and his brother witnessed Officer Faulkner's murder that night, meaning Mumia Abu Jamal's brother, Wesley Clark's brother, witnessed it, and his brother has nothing to do with that innocence campaign. He was going to testify and never showed up, and this was a death penalty case. And yet his supporters will say things. So again, I'm going back to Karen Reed. Why are the supporters saying things like she didn't do it when she can't say those things?
Well, first, I do want to say that all these mobile billboards, the billboard that was put up in front of Gillette Stadium, it did not come out of my pocket. We have a Facebook group that basically funds everything. The signs that you see there as well. Someone in the group makes them. Everyone makes their own signs. We're definitely not paid to be there. A lot of us take work off to be there. And at this point, it's become a passion to a lot of people because...
Okay, so the allegation is not that all of them that are paid to be there, but other people have said that there's been ads in the paper saying, come to a protest to be paid. And a lot of the signs are uniform. And as a long time, as a child of activists, I know that, and I'm talking, when I say activists, Abby Hoffman stayed in my house. Gosh. And I would know, I was dragged to these kinds of rallies, not free people rallies, but other political kinds of rallies. And we were always told to bring a sign because it makes your group look bigger. Just FYI for those interested.
The evidence that's being provided by...
But some of these signs are very uniform and look like they've been made by the same person. So I'm not sure about that claim that everyone makes their own signs. There's a lot of the same look, and some different ones. I'm just saying not everyone made their own sign.
The defense is backed up with receipts. And it almost seems like every time that something new, groundbreaking is brought...
So it's backed up with receipts, but is it backed up with evidence? So like I said before, when you do a social media campaign, there's no rules for evidence. You're not sworn into oath, and anything goes. Because of our First Amendment, you can do anything. Where in a court of law, you can't. And our justice system is set up to get to the truth. Why do they want to do this in the court of public opinion? Why aren't they waiting for the trial? Because this campaign, I think, is really, it's getting dangerous when people are knocking on people's doors, when people are being accused of murder. I think it's when people have a belief like this, it can become almost like, it can get very dangerous. It can become like, it can really take up a lot of your time and become almost an obsession.
Forward, the Commonwealth always decides to be like, look over there, oh, look, she kissed him, or this person's doing that. And, if you look at the facts of what's being presented, to me, it's clear as day. She is 100% innocent.
Now, Nick, there are...
Okay, but he hasn't presented us with any facts. He's accused the state of doing something, but the state has given one interview. She's given how many interviews? How many of these publicity stunt stuff with these rallies in front of the courthouse? And is Turtle Boy being paid by the defense? Who's being paid by the defense? We'll never know what's going on behind the scenes. Check out the movie A Murder in the Park. It's a documentary about how Anthony Porter got off death row. A lot of stuff was going on behind the scenes. Defense business can be very dirty, but because it's a big government, big power, we always like to think as Americans, we value freedom and we don't like the little person to be crushed by the big power of the government. But show me that it's been happening here. His argument is this is happening. They're accusing her of kissing that person, doing this. And of course, that came up that her kissing another man could have started the argument that night. But that argument was made in court, not in the court of public opinion.
Thousands and thousands of people I've interacted with online and have met at courthouses that are like court TV fans and true crime buffs, etc. And I know that they get connected to cases. Is this the first time you've been connected to a case, or has this always been something where you're talking about justice and looking at what you believe to be injustices?
Peter Estrada, I've done multiple shows on the Central Park Five from the court transcripts of both trials. I would say that is an ultimate case of a very successful innocence fraud campaign where they got $40 million. So when I talk about innocence fraud, I think ultimately the aim with Karen Reed is not only to get her case dismissed, but to sue in our civil courts where the bar of evidence is much lower and get a payout for her wrongful accusation and wrongful arrest. It is the biggest grift that's going on in our country that no one will talk about because no one wants to go up against. If I had to guess, this was what I would guess, is our media is very anti-police. No one wants to go up against a bunch of lawyers, and it's a sensational story. And sensational stories make money. It is a money-making racket. So you'll never hear about the physical evidence, the blood, the dirt on their clothing, statements by Yusuf Salam hitting the jogger over the head, Trisha Medley, all the other people they attacked in the park that night, how all their statements, the 4 who confessed and the ones on the periphery who took deals, how all their confessions were consistent, that they all wanted to go out and rob joggers and bicyclists that night. So I hear a lot of people poo-poo me and say I'm wrong, but they just know what they've heard in our media. Don't stop at our media. Read the transcripts. They know you won't read the transcripts. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. And there's no money in it.
No, I've never been involved in anything like this. This is a very powerful movement. Say each and every person that you see at these protests and at these rallies truly believes.
What makes it powerful?
Believes that, this could be them. And I think that's why you see so many people come out because, again,
because they've all put themselves on Karen Reed. They've all put their own personalities on Karen Reed. That's what he's saying. We see ourselves in Karen Reed. What if this happened to us, but they are not Karen Reed. They weren't in this situation and they don't know how they would have acted. Really, they would have said either I hit him, or did I hit him? Both put it in the realm of possibilities that it happened. It's not a great argument for innocence.
And presented, how could you say she's guilty? There's lots of lying going on, withholding evidence going on. I've seen a few cases and I've never seen something like this.
So which cases have you seen? Have you been in a courthouse? And where is the evidence that show me the evidence that the evidence has been withheld? Has it just been withheld because the defense says it's been withheld? See, I'm just so curious that he's really not being asked any or pressed on any follow-up questions here. And
Nick, let me ask you now. Turtle Boy under indictment, charges. He's got to battle his own legal battles while still supporting Karen Reed. Have you been charged with anything? Have you been questioned? Have you been confronted by law enforcement or prosecutors?
Actually, yes. Me and 9 other people, and one of them at the time was a minor, were holding signs on a public sidewalk in downtown Canton, across the street from a specific pizza shop. We just happened to be because it's the main road down there, and we got summons to.
Looper, cops can be corrupt, lie, but where's the proof it happened in this case? It's not on the Ring cameras. It's not on his phone. Show me where it happened. Just because something could happen does not mean it did happen. And I will wait till the trial to come to an ultimate conclusion. I'm just telling you where my mind is going now. Please don't take this as this is not a final decision of guilt. But I'm showing you where the red flags or where my alarm bells are being rung in the language and then the way it's being done.
Court for a magistrate hearing, witness intimidation on a police officer for not giving our names, and then also picketing a witness because we were apparently too close or within eyesight is what they told us of a witness at the time. Now, we did have this magistrate hearing back in January, and we were told that we would have an answer within a week.
So they're talking about Karen Reed's right to a fair trial. They don't think that picketing a witness house interferes with her right to a fair trial? Really? I know that I get it. They want a certain outcome, but this you do not do. And the fact that Karen Reed and Karen Reed's lawyers are all okaying this and all cheering it along really disturbs me. This seems like, to my eye, a giant deny attack reverse victim offender. They seem to be the ones who are up to the dirty tricks, not the state.
And we're going on 2 months now with no answer to if there was probable cause or not.
Has this deterred you from showing up? Has it altered your behavior in any way?
I mean, my behavior was never bad to begin with. It's not illegal to hold a sign. It's not illegal to speak what you want. It has not stopped me from going to the court cases.
Yeah, but it is illegal, and you found out it is illegal to intimidate witnesses. These people did not choose to be involved in this court case. And whether you think that their own actions are the cause of this, let it play out in court. Let the courts do their job. And injustice hasn't been done. I mean, I know you think just the accusation, but there has been no conviction. Let the courts play out. How can they not see that? How can they not see that that is disruptive to Karen Reed's right to to a fair trial?
I would say I don't go to Canton anymore because I feel like there may be a target on people's backs if they do protest there. But other than that, I wouldn't say I have anything to worry about because we're just there to support her realistically.
All right, let's talk about the victim in all of this, John O'Keefe. What message do you have for his family? I mean, they've lost this. John is gone forever. Officer John O'Keefe is gone. What message do you have for his family?
Absolutely. Through this whole thing, I'm sure you've seen it as well. There is two sides to this middle, and it almost seems like no matter what side you are on, to the other person, you're going to be wrong. I want to see justice for John O'Keefe. Obviously, something very tragic happened inside that house.
So you don't think that after she's acquitted, if the defense can bring up any really stunning evidence that something else happened, someone else wouldn't be prosecuted? You think it's going to stop here? Why not wait? Why not wait? Why do you think it's appropriate to do this now?
And like the FBI had said, the reconstructionist had said that his damages do not match a vehicle striking him. And I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. I really hope one day justice is going to come very soon.
So that's going to be interesting. So it's going to really be a battle of the expert witnesses. And I was listening to a podcast today, just an argument on both sides, just to hear what the arguments are on both sides of this case. And they brought up Henry Lee. Now, that's been an expert in the Michael Peterson case, the OJ case for the defense. He's a defense blood expert. But these experts can be very, very impressive, but doesn't mean they're right. With a lot of experience, a lot of ex-FBI people sign on to these campaigns, and they will put out, like they did in the Amanda Knox case, Jim Clemente and Steve Moore put out a ton of information that was not true.
And I really do hope we can get there soon, because this case is turning very messy.
Let me ask you.
Yeah, I agree. And okay, so just before I go, I'm going to keep it probably pretty short for tonight. Before I go, I wanted, thinking back to this interview I did with Adnan Syed's biggest supporter. Now, so if you don't know Adnan Syed, he's Heyman Lee's killer. I'm not going to get into how he got out. It's like so ridiculous. Just to let you know, actually I will. To sum it up, Marilyn Mosby, who's one of these DAs, who's a former defense attorney, was put in with Soros money, and that is a fact. George Gascon, I think I even have a clip of it. I won't play it today, but I will if you're really interested. Got together with George Soros, had this idea to run defense attorneys as district attorneys. So in Baltimore, Maryland, what you had was two defense attorneys talking to themselves in court, no one representing the victim, no one representing the people. And Marilyn Mosby was being charged with fraud, and now she's been convicted of it, is on her way out the door. They put some old, ridiculous defense talking points on her, and basically she agrees in what's called a non-camera, a camera meeting, which is really a non-camera meeting, a secret meeting that's not recorded between the defense and the prosecution, but they're one and the same at this point. And they put out these new talking points, testing the DNA on Heyman Lee's shoes, which is, if you're in a forensic class, one of the first things you do is test the DNA to see how much DNA you pick up in a day. The DNA, and not on her feet, but in the back of her car. One of the other new stunning pieces of evidence was Adnan Syed's mentor's wife talking about Adnan Syed harassing Heyman Lee. So one of these new suspects that released Adnan Syed was actually Adnan Syed himself. So now it was a huge violation of victims' rights, and we're waiting for the Supreme Court to rule on it. And of course, when he got out, they had one of these sort of a whole bunch of his Innocence Project class there on the court steps to make it look like everyone was absolutely supported his innocence and something great had happened. Anyway, she was a big supporter. She gave tons of her money to helping free Adnan Syed until she came to the conclusion that she's guilty. And she talks about what she discovered about these innocence campaigns. Let's take a listen.
About Jay telling them where the car was, because, I'm sure you heard about the tap, tap, tap. They're tapping on a piece of paper.
Oh, wait. I think this went a little too far. Hold on.
Because she was a huge part of the case. And they just
So they blow up the minutia. So they make the minutia very important, and they make the things that are very important, like not important at all. They don't deal with them really. So
I never even thought about the fact that he didn't know where he was, or why it would make sense that Jay, you know, and the police would frame Adnan. I didn't even think about that because, I was so focused on this stuff that they make into such a big deal. And so they blow up the minutia, and then they go to the conspiracy angle. Because once you believe that there's a conspiracy involved in it, then you can just go ahead and throw out any evidence, especially, you know, Jay, and knowing where the car was, because they make you believe that these cops are just so horrible and corrupt, and they're absolutely willing to lie about Jay telling them where the car was, because, you know, I'm sure you heard about the tap, tap, tap. They're tapping on a piece of paper and telling him everything in Morse code, or, you know, like,
are you kidding me? I know I haven't heard about the tap, 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 but...
oh, you haven't?
No, I haven't. That's how they communicated what was going... That's right. I got to listen more to Undisclosed. So how did this all come apart? Like, how did this whole worldview crash for you?
Okay, so it all crashed. Okay, so I was super into it for, it was over 2 years. I mean, it was definitely over 2 years where I was constantly donating to his legal fund.
So you gave money to the legal fund, and Bob Ruff's Patreon. You gave money to Bob Ruff's Patreon, the legal fund.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I helped build the shed.
Right.
But mainly though, I donated a lot on several occasions to Adnan's legal fund and to other innocence projects. But so it was definitely over 2 years, and I would get on Reddit, and I would just, you know, anytime someone would want to debate me and say anything about the evidence, I would say, evidence? Sorry that you know, live in a world where you think the police don't plant evidence and make up things, but I live in the real world.
Right, you're so naive.
Happen.
Right.
And, you know, so therefore you can just throw away all that evidence because none of it even matters because he didn't do it.
Right.
And I was very into that for a long time. And I don't know if it was just, you know, like I said, it was a couple of years, and then I got into other things, and I had more stuff going on, and I didn't really get on Reddit as much. And Undisclosed, you know, there were several seasons of that, and then Serial Dynasty turned into Truth and Justice, and there's several seasons of that. And I followed and I listened, but I wasn't nearly as into it as I was.
So what she's saying is that they don't have to come up with a cohesive theory. They just have to put a lot of question marks. What if this is this? What if this is that? What if all these cops conspired without any proof of it actually happening? And they usually, it's a lot of young people who haven't lived life, who have no BS meter, who don't know how all these things together. So these theories can go on forever because they can go into any direction. You don't really have to stick with a lot of the evidence. You can go on all sorts of, if it's possible, it's planted. We're supposed to believe these cops are walking around in the snow planting evidence.
With Adnan, and I just hadn't really dealt with it for a few months. I was like,
you took a break,
busy doing other things.
Right.
When I heard an episode, I had found this other podcast I really liked called Cold Case Murder Mysteries, and I heard a few episodes of it, and I really liked the guy. And then I saw that at some point in the past he had done an episode on Adnan. He had done like a 2-part thing. And I thought the guy was like the smartest person ever. I loved the way he analyzed cases. So I was like, I can't wait to hear him just, you know, destroy this case and go on about how innocent Adnan is. So I was like really excited to hear it, and I turned it on. And like within the first 30 seconds or a minute or so, he said, and Adnan is obviously guilty. And I was like, whoa, like I didn't even want to hear it. Like I actually turned it off and decided I wasn't even going to listen to it because I was just horrified that this guy could possibly think Adnan was guilty. And I was like, I'm never even going to listen to the show again. I didn't want to hear anything he said after that. But then a few days later, I was, you know, bored, and I was like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get my some paper and a pen, and I'm going to write down. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to write down all the things he gets wrong because clearly this guy isn't listening to undisclosed. He doesn't know about all this new evidence. So I'm going to write down all the stuff he misses, and I'm going to write him a strongly worded email and let him know, you know, what everything that he gets wrong.
Uh-huh.
So I turn it on, and I start listening, and he just, like I said, I think it was because I hadn't been involved in that world. I kind of stepped away from it. I wasn't on Reddit. I wasn't constantly listening to, you know, the echo chamber of innocence constantly. So I just heard the guy, the host, his name is Ryan. And I just heard his perspective of it, and he just, he said from the very beginning, you don't need to know anything about the cell phone towers. You don't need to hear anything about Jay's stories. You don't need to know anything about Asia McClain. None of that even matters. All you need to know in order to know who committed this crime is listen to Adnan's own words and actions.
That's right.
And he just goes back. What?
Yes, you're right. It's very psychological. It's a psychological breakdown rather than a, you know, an evidence-based breakdown, no?
Exactly. It's all about the psychological. That's what he does for all the cases. And it's so perfect there because I was so ready to go through all this evidence and the minutia and, like, you know, all the stuff that I was under this impression for so long was the big clinchers, you know, of the case and how it was so obvious he was innocent. And he just goes back to just the most basic of things and is like, it's absolutely outrageous for you to think that, for us to believe, you know, that he doesn't know where he was that day. It's impossible. It's impossible for him to not know where he was that day. And he just breaks it down like that and talks about how it's very clear that the reason he doesn't remember where he was that day is because he was strangling Hayes to death in his car. And that, you know, it's ridiculous to believe that there was some kind of conspiracy against him because there's nobody else that would have killed her, especially in that way. And it talks about, okay, well, there's no physical evidence. Because that is true, and that is a big thing. No, he didn't need physical evidence. But, again, all you need to know is his words. When he's talking with Sarah Koenig in Serial, he talks about this. His parents were so, you know, old-fashioned and didn't want him to even give a ride to a girl. He would, before he would come home, he would make sure a girl didn't even leave a hair in the car before showing up.
Good point.
He lived this double life where he's smoking weed and having sex, and so his whole life was like lying and covering up evidence. And, you know, if he's really going to smoke weed, he's saying he's going somewhere else, and he's got to make sure he doesn't smell like it and getting it all out of his car. He's a professional at getting rid of evidence.
So
that's how he lived his life.
What did this feel like to you to hear this?
It was, I literally felt like I got hit by a car because it just destroyed like my whole worldview of everything, because I just sat there and was listening to it, and I'm like, no, wait, no. And it was horrible. By the time it was over, I was just like staring at my wall, like couldn't even move. I didn't know what to do because I was convinced. By the time it was over, I knew in my head and in my heart he was guilty, but I still didn't really want to believe it, but I did. And I called my fiance, I called my family, I called everyone, and I was like, guess what? Edna's guilty. And they're like, what? Because they are so used to me going on and on and on about how positive I was that he was innocent. Mm-hmm. They were all, I think, just shocked and couldn't believe that. They probably never trust anything I say ever again now.
Right. And you said also that they're tricks that they all use. Now when you look at cases, you can recognize. What are the tricks that they all use?
Well, mainly you have to believe the conspiracy angle. You know, you have to believe that all the cops and DA are just out to get certain people to close cases. Maybe they're not necessarily even dead people, but this is just what they have to do. Mm-hmm. You know, so all these cops are willing to do that, even if you have no evidence of it. You just have to assume.
Right.
And then the blowing up of the minor details that you don't even see, like, so the big things, like, you know, where was this person during the time, you know, isn't even thought about because they just blow up these little details so much. And then purposefully leaving things out. Like, now I'm so sure, like, I'm still trying to find someone who's locked up, like, still incarcerated, who's innocent, who somebody has done a story on. Like, I've been looking, and I can't find anyone who's actually innocent that's still locked up. And
Right.
and I'm serious.
I'm laughing a little,
I
but
so
yeah.
hard. I want to find someone, but I can't. But like, there's just it seems like if you get done listening to a documentary or a podcast or whatever, and it seems like by the end that it's absolutely outrageous that the cops even arrested this person, let alone a jury convicting him because there's no evidence, that should be a huge red flag, because that doesn't happen. That there's something that they're leaving out. There's something that you're missing, some huge detail, because there's so many appeals courts in this country and so many innocence projects and so many attorneys that will work pro bono. Like, if this person's been locked up and they've had appeal after appeal denied, and there's a state's attorney trying to keep them in, it is because they know that they're guilty, and it is because that, there's clearly evidence. Juries are not stupid, and it's annoying to me now when I hear so many innocent people going crazy and saying they're so positive somebody's innocent because they've listened to a documentary.
Right.
When there's a jury in the room that heard both sides of everything for weeks or months, they know the case way better than you.
Right, and the thing
and
that
you think you know better.
Right, and we don't know yet. We haven't heard the trial yet, so that's a difference here. But go to, I was really disappointed that the only one who sent me links to actual court transcripts was Miss Shorty. Read the most unbiased stuff is on both sides, on the defense side and on the prosecution side, is the court transcripts. I know it's not titillating reading. Sometimes it can be really interesting, but it is a lot of work. But if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's not so much that Karen Reed is guilty or she's innocent or my opinion. It's really to examine the trial, and we haven't had a trial yet, and examine the pre-trial motions and see what the arguments are, and see the way these narratives are being built. Because our press is more than happy. Look at the musical Chicago, and I know that's based on a true story. Our press has an incentive to go with these very sensational stories of innocence because they sell papers. They make documentarians a lot of money. The story of rightfully guy convicted is not a sensational story. It could be compelling, but you're certainly on a short list of awards in this country if that's the narrative you're putting out. Please like this episode, subscribe to the channel. I'm off tomorrow. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave me a 5-star review. I'll be back Friday. No, not Friday, Saturday. Sorry, I'm losing my days of the week. Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern, with another live stream. Thanks for listening. Have a great night, everybody.